She went from drama teacher to a published playwright, completely on accident. On today's episode, I'm interviewing Beth Kenniv, founder and artistic director for Inspiring Arts Productions, and I'm going to pick her brain on the steps she took to write her very own musical. Have you ever felt deep within that there's something more you're supposed to be doing, but you're not sure what? Have you ever felt like you're producing a lot, but not expressing at all? Welcome to She Made It. I'm your host, Elle Zimmerman, and I am on a mission to help you cultivate meaning through the path of creativity. Join me to eavesdrop on conversations with brave women who broke through their resistances into a life of authenticity. Because I believe if she made it, you can too. Welcome to this episode of She Made It. I am so looking forward to chatting with this guest, and this podcast is going to be released in May. May has become the busiest month of my entire life. May 2019 is going down in history as the busiest month of my entire life, and I thought no better person to interview than another fellow crazy busy mom who tries to live a creative life. So Beth Kenniv will be our guest.
Right. So Elle, I know that you said that this May has been really busy. Could you give us and our listeners a really quick rundown of why it has been so busy for you?
Well, first of all, I will say it's a very special month because there are some special birthdays.
Right.
Namely yours, Clara.
Yes, it was yesterday.
Yay, happy birthday. And also our audio engineer, a.k.a. Ben, Clara's husband.
Right.
His birthday was a couple days ago.
It was.
My son, Oliver, had his birthday. Another part of our team, Julie, had her birthday, and I'm sure there are many of you listening in who also had a birthday in May. So Cheers to the May birthdays.
At our family gathering recently, I think we had a happy birthday for 5 different people.
Wow.
Around the table,
you're like saying all their names in order.
It was kind of nobody's birthday because it was everybody's birthday.
That's funny. Also, though, it's a huge month in our family because we have an 8th grade graduate, we have a high school graduate, we had a confirmation celebration. My daughter finished her first year of high school and is deciding to return.
As if she had a choice.
Right. Just so many really incredible transitions. I started the month going to a training retreat for working with my business coach, and just really lots of exciting things happening, lots of endings, lots of new beginnings. So it's a month to celebrate, but it's also like, whoa, I can't even believe I'm getting through it at times.
But you are, and you're in the home stretch.
I am. And again, as I said, it's such a perfect person to bring on for today's episode, Beth Kenniv, a dear, dear friend of mine. And I was telling someone in the office, and Claire, I may have mentioned this to you, that Beth and I have worked together for several years, and you'll hear a little bit about that in our conversation. But one signature aspect of our relationship is that we tend to talk and have a hard time stopping. We've been known to be standing in parking lots after rehearsals till the wee hours of the morning, so much that sometimes we see each other and we just decide to look the other way.
Pretend that you didn't see each other.
Because we know the path that leads ahead for us. But
you're being merciful to our guests, and this will not be a 4-hour-long podcast.
That's right. Yeah. What we did is we focused in on one very particular part of Beth's creative journey. It was a path that she did not plan. It was a path that sort of unfolded, and she took one baby step at a time. She kept trusting sort of the messages from the universe, or in her words, God.
Yeah. Beth is so lovely, and I think our listeners are really going to love this episode.
So today on She Made It, we have a very, very special person, and I am so excited when an interview happens in my office. And so today I am welcoming a dear friend, Beth Kenniv, to sit right across the desk from me as we record. And before we start asking Beth questions, I want to give you a little bit of a little picture into how I met Beth. So if you listen to my episode 1, which was sort of the story of my own creative journey and how my life as a performing artist had to take a back seat as I really threw myself into motherhood. And Beth and her children were at the same school that my kids attended, and no one in that school knew anything about my past. They didn't really know I had been a professional actress. I was a singer, and I remember being, I think it was a playground or a school activity, and Beth was there. I knew she was the theater director, and we started chatting, and I dropped little seeds of information about my past, and her eyes were lit up, and I was sort of guarding my space and my time, and then long before you know it, I'm working side by side with her, coaching the students that were in the plays that she was directing and producing, and vocal coaching, and just really, really appreciated the way she led students, the way she viewed art and theater, and the way she viewed my contribution to really bringing life to the characters in these musicals. And we just really, really worked well together and really loved working together. And one bit of the story that I'm not sure Beth even knows is the very first show that I really jumped into was Beauty and the Beast. And Beauty and the Beast was at a time that I had gone through a really big loss. I had a second trimester miscarriage, and I had my little kids in school, kindergarten, and I really healed through that process of the redemption story of Beauty and the Beast, the just art healing me in the process. And Beth was such a collaborator in that healing. So it just was a beautiful way that we started our friendship. So do you remember that, Beth?
I do.
Do you remember the first conversation at the playground, or where I was either in the parking lot or it was at a playground? Do you remember that?
Barely.
Yeah.
What I remember most is just working with you and watching you work with people and students and going, wow. So we definitely have a mutual admiration for each other in the art, and it's just been a cool journey.
Yeah, and our kids are about the same age.
As our kids are growing together.
Yeah. And so you have so many different stories that we could share with the She Made It audience, but one in particular that I want to focus on, because you have this accomplished career as a theater music educator, performer yourself, but you stumbled into playwriting. Mm-hmm. And I just would love to hear, how did that happen? And what was the inspiration? And if you want to kind of lead us into that and then how that sort of evolved, tell us that story.
Well, I did stumble. Actually, I was a very committed teacher, loved students and loved what I was about with students, and that evolved as well. I really want to inspire students and audiences with theater, with music, believing that the arts are truly meant to inspire. And I actually even wrote down inspire so I could tell everybody. But to inspire means to animate the intellect or emotions and to fill with an exalting influence. And
I love that. Can you repeat that?
Inspire. To animate the intellect or emotions and to fill with an exalting influence.
Yeah, it's
and
beautiful.
So just that the arts can lift us up out of where we are. The arts can awaken us. I want to come home from the theater talking about it all the way home. I want to be, kind of that electric feeling of something just happened in my heart or my mind that I didn't see the world that way before. And it's a kind of a whole different classroom for students when you're in the theater, to let them not just learn something in a book, but to be it and to speak it and to act it out. And so what happened was, as I was teaching in a small Christian school and started to get more and more deeply convicted about what we do on stage needs to be beautiful. It needs to be inspiring. And that was way before I had started the company Inspiring Arts, but I started to really know that that's where I was going. And so I started reading script after script after script and trying to find something that I believed was worthy of my students to speak, because they were going to be memorizing these lines. And I thought, I want it to be something that's true, that's deep and wonderful and rich. And it was hard to find. There's great theater out there, but more maybe for like 10 people that are in professional theater as opposed to 45 kids. So what was I going to find? And so...
or they have a lot of those, the plays like the Disney Junior shows that are really made to be commercial vehicles, not necessarily art vehicles. So I commend you for going to the art side of it, not just the commercial.
Yeah, that's actually one thing that I remember early in our relationship. You mentioned, there's art and there's entertainment, and the entertainment sells, and that's good too, and it's fun, and there's nothing wrong with it. But art is something that I just aspire to. So, and I know that there's a deeper appreciation when we do it by the students and by the audience. And so here I was. This is back in 2011 when it all began. I actually thinking about telling this story today. I was thinking my kids were 6, 9, and 11. I was a busy mom, and I was actually crazy after 22 years of never being on stage. I was always directing, and teaching. I got back on stage with none other than my good friend Elle.
So I'm just going to tell a story. So they were I guess you call it a community, semi-professional company, was doing Sound of Music, and they were welcoming adults. And my children were all auditioning, and then I see Beth singing for Maria, and I'm thinking, well, I want to do that. So I think I might have even talked to you before even talking to Grace. Like, are you okay if I throw my name in the hat? And do you remember that? Was that, did I do that?
Should we do this? Should I do this? I was thinking, am I crazy to do this? But I couldn't wait to do it. And it was just a blast to get on stage again, but also to do it with you.
Yeah.
And here I was, a longtime teacher, and you were this professional actress. And I just think we had such fun gaining from each other's experience. And
so for the listeners, so the production was double cast. So we each played the role of Maria on alternating nights. And then because it was trying to be, because Sound of Music is such a popular show, they actually had 3 sets of the Von Trapp children. And so we rehearsed with several different groups of kids, and it was really fun because my 2 children were in my Von Trapp family kids. So for me, it was an opportunity to perform with people I love and my own children. Yeah.
It was fun. So that's the little pressing pause in the story. That was what was happening while all the rest of this was starting to percolate. And I didn't even really know it. That was happening while I was teaching, while I was also directing the big spring show. And that spring show happened to be a local playwright who you introduced me to. And so I was working on a piece that had just been written, and it was very exciting. And I thought, "Ooh, someone wrote a play," and I was never in touch with a playwright before. That was inspiring. I didn't even realize that was just kind of in the background working on me. But while this is like December of 2011, and along comes New Year's Eve, and I have this moment to just stop with all the busyness and sit and go, what happened last year? What's coming up? Is there anything that I should be looking forward to in this next year? Thank God for New Year's Eve, because we can just sort of, most people are going to parties. I just wanted to sit there. And so I can't really tell this story without inserting it's a story of my faith as well. And so my faith is very, a part of everything in my life. And I was sitting with the Lord and praying, and I just kind of randomly opened up the Bible. Could I have some direction? I was so busy, I hadn't really been in touch with the Spirit, my spirit. And so there was kind of a randomness to it. But that moment, this is all coinciding with while I'm reading all these scripts and coming up dry and getting just kind of a little disheartened by really what's out there and what I really wanted to do. So I'm opening up my Bible, and it flips open to the book of Ruth, which is a short book that only takes about 15 minutes to read. And it's a book that's unique in the Bible because it's just a story of human interaction. And it's a story that's a picture of something bigger and deeper than what's actually on the surface of it. And it doesn't have a big supernatural element to it. It's just people. And I read it, and it was like it kind of lifted off the page to me. I thought to myself, this is beautiful. This is the kind of story I'm looking for. It's too bad it's not a play, because boy, it would be a really nice play. And then I said, well, it's too bad that I don't write, because, you know,
like
too
immediate
bad.
resistances, like
Immediate.
Yeah.
I don't write.
Yeah.
I don't. So I had a nice time. I closed my book. I didn't journal. I didn't have this great epiphany. I just thought, wow, that's beautiful. It's too bad it doesn't exist. And so closed the book, went on with busy life. And the show was great. That was in January. And then the next one was, we were in full swing for the spring musical with all the kids. And in the midst of, I don't know, maybe it was January or February, I'm talking to my exceedingly talented brother-in-law, James, who is a composer in his own right, but has never done anything really big like writing a musical. And off the cuff, out of the blue, he says, Beth, let's write a musical. And I said, oh gosh, that's weird that you would say that. Are you sure? Do you mean that? Because I kind of already have the story. It just came right back up to me. And I thought, well, I don't know if, he's busy too. I don't know if that'll really be anything. I said, maybe in the summer we'll talk about it again. And I just sort of backpedaled a little bit, but at the same time, it was exciting because I thought, I do have that story in my heart. It's definitely there. And then we were, as we were finishing up the musical at school, another equally exceedingly talented composer, Jeff Smith, our accompanist for the show, said, Beth, let's write a musical. And I said,
really?
You are kidding me. You did not just say that. And so that was it. Yeah. I said, well, okay, I give in. And so I didn't know what I was getting into, but the second I actually stepped into it, I had this kind of odd, exciting confidence about it. And I couldn't stop. I just wrote and wrote.
I love that. So I just want to reflect for a minute, because I just love how you opened your heart and you asked, but then you closed the book and the resistances were there. And then, whatever your higher power is, for you, it's God. God comes and knocks you over the head with not one frying pan, but two. Mm-hmm. And then the relief when you stepped into it. Mm-hmm. That's just really powerful. And it's a reminder that those promptings we have in our heart are there to be listened to. We are made to yearn for more and be open to explore. So that's a beautiful
We all work differently, and some people need promptings. And it just encouraged me, because we are a community. We are the things that you say to me really make a difference, when you get encouraged by someone. So that just showed me even from your very first podcast, as you were saying, that man on the plane that just said, do it, we need that. And how many times, anything that I've accomplished in my life has come with encouragement from people. So the whole process, there was a lot of encouragement along the way.
And trusting yourself, though. I mean, going you closed the book, but you didn't forget it. You let it live on your heart.
That's right.
And you kept reminding yourself, okay, there it is again. There it is again. Yeah. So you collaborated with the two composers. You started working. You're feeling this, like you called it, this strange confidence that propelled you forward. And then what happened?
Well, that was in the summer. I took a playwriting class. I read books. And I knew that I was going to be the one sort of forming up the story and then informing them. We need a song here. We're going to, these are kind of what the lyrics are about. And then we started to really collaborate in the fall. And by September, we were writing music and starting to put the whole thing together. And by December, we were in auditions. And the next March, we were performing it.
Yeah. So in the traditional world of playwriting and musical creation, and it doesn't happen that quickly. It's a much more cumbersome workshopping, stage reading. But I believe you are so trusted and respected in the community where you were teaching and leading, and that they opened the door for that too. And I remember the conversations with you that they weren't like completely on board. There was some skepticism, but it was your belief in making this a valuable experience, a quality piece of art. So you had to continue to be an advocate for your idea.
You do. And when you're beginning something, sometimes there's that, when you are kind of ignorant, you're kind of just stepping in. I was overly confident. Now looking back, I think, wow, now that I know a little bit more, I probably might have been even more hesitant. So there was a beginner's sort of that euphoric, I'm going to do this. And that really propelled me because, I do say that I started to write and kept writing, but it was hard. There was a pressing through, and there was, I think for me, work feels fun to me. And so creative work just is, I would work until midnight because that was sometimes the only time I had.
Yeah.
And I just loved that. And that was a release and a relief, and it was energizing to me. So, but yeah, definitely endurance in the process and just sticking to it.
And in the midst of having busy kids and a busy life and your husband's self-employed, and how did you find the bandwidth to do that?
I think there's a beauty in deadlines because creative people a lot of times can go, maybe I'll feel inspired tomorrow. But there is something about, no, I have to get this scene written today, and then tomorrow I'm going to edit it, and then the next day. So,
but did you create the deadlines, or
yes,
was that okay?
Yes, I went in to the principal and said, I'm going to, partner with this team and write this show, and we're going to do it next spring. And so he that means your timeline would be this? Yes, I think so. So, there was definitely that forced deadline, which was a beautiful thing to just get us really moving. And of course, when it was finished, it was not finished. It was this wonderful premiere that we could look at our work, and then begin to chisel away at. And really, it has gone through so many edits and performances where every time I see it on stage, there's new things. And that's part of creativity, of course, too, is...
Yeah. So how many, like now it's, you did it at the school, and then you produced it in like a more of a semi-professional, and then now it's being sold to colleges and community theaters. And so
that's quite a process. It's now probably about 2 years ago, I would say, by 2017, 18, it was finally at a place after lots of rewrites that I thought it's ready to go. And so it has been in 9 or 10 theaters around the Midwest.
And the name of it
is Horizons of Gold.
And tell us a real quick synopsis. We know it's based on the story of Ruth.
It's based on the story of Ruth, but you wouldn't recognize it as a Bible story at all. It's set in the 1930s, and it's about a young Mexican migrant who finds herself lost and abandoned in a very turbulent time in California in the 30s, where the jobs were scarce and racism was, very, very prevalent, and her feeling out of place as a foreigner, and just her story, her journey. She's a hero. I love heroes. I love just the whole romance of living big and dramatic and doing sacrificial, amazing things, and that's her. And the three characters are just powerful. There's just a great dramatic triangle between them, and that kind of propels the story. An older mother figure who has lost everything. They're just women who have been through tragic things, and their perseverance is really the name of the game with it, is perseverance. And they push on together, and they look for hope. And hope is something that we're just really missing. And so it's been a story just to see how it's been a healing for me, for so many people that say it is a story that brought healing in some area, whether it's their heart or their experiences with people or things.
Yeah, so not just inspiring, but healing. Mm-hmm. So how in the world did you go from the Book of Ruth to the Dust Bowl?
Well, the funny thing was, there's always these funny little tangenty things that was actually in my brain. I thought it'll be fun. I love to costume. It'll be fun to costume a show in the 30s. So I kept looking for...
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious.
Isn't it hilarious?
So it all starts with the dress.
It does. I said yes. So I'm back reading these scripts, kind of drawn to the 30s. I have never done a show in the 30s. It's time to do a show in the 30s. And so when I read the Book of Ruth, I'm like, oh, let's put it in the 30s. Kind of just joking with myself. But then when I boiled the story down, the story needs a few base elements, which is there's a famine. And it's really based around the desire to be home. There's an element of being displaced from home, and home is this place of just promise and beauty and, of course, everything that home is. And of course, that home in the Bible is Israel. But in the story, it's the heartland of America. It's, and so I thought, okay, this is the Dust Bowl. That was a horrible famine of sorts. And people were displaced, kind of like the Grapes of Wrath, that story where people are going to California. And that's where we met Rose, who was this foreigner of sorts. And so all of a sudden I had a really compelling current day feel to this story that in real life took place in, 1100 BC. And all of a sudden it was just connecting into my grandparents' generation, and so loving that.
Yeah, so it's really, I just want to point out what is so beautiful about your process is that you really just go. You allow inspiration. You don't overanalyze it, and maybe you do in your own moments. But the way you're sharing it is that you're really just what brings you delight, what brings you energy, and those are all part of who you are as a creative person. And you're bringing that to the story. And so just trusting, letting the process sort of unfold, and not over questioning, and oh, that would be fun to do it in the 30s, and then letting that open up to you, all that was available within that choice. So, yeah. So the show is, the other thing that I want to sort of comment on that I observed in the process was, so we're talking about art and creativity and how you sort of stepped into playwriting and producing, but also you had to form a business out of it. You don't go from writing a play in your room to now it's being produced across the Midwest. And I remember, watching that evolve, how do you do a logo? How do we incorporate into a nonprofit? And so tell me how you went from, okay, this is people are responding to this. They're talking to me about healing, being inspired. People want more. Now you have to follow the next call, which is, how do we bring this to the market?
Yeah, that was the call I really probably resisted the most, because it's just not in my wheelhouse. I just felt out of place, and I'm still actually getting my footing to do that. And so the things that feel easy, we run to that, and the things that feel difficult. But I also felt like I had now almost an obligation, and so you don't want to bury what you have. And, so I think that I take little steps. That's just how I work. And the little step felt okay, so I could take the next one. Once we finished the show, we sat around at dinner and said, hey, let's do this again, fix some of the pieces that need to be fixed. And in order to do that, we need to put it on a bigger stage. And in order to do that, there needs to be something, at the top of the poster that says something presents.
Right.
Wait, we need a company. We need to be a company all of a sudden. And so that's how Inspiring Arts Productions was born.
Yeah. So you had to come up with a company, and it was Inspiring Arts. And so now, tell me where Inspiring Arts is in your life now.
Inspiring Arts has become a great delight. I was able to actually step away from teaching in the classroom and expand the teaching and directing that I do with students and adults from all over the place in Cincinnati. And that's been exciting. We do 2 main stage productions a year that are mostly student driven, all ages of students. And in the summer, we welcome adults into our shows. I love directing. It's been amazing. I have a great team, a small powerhouse team that really helps run things. We have summer camps for kids, and now we're starting this fall Inspiring Arts Academy. And we will have, that's probably news to you too. We'll have an orchestra and a chorale and acting classes and dance classes. So it's just, I don't think I really envisioned the whole thing. It just has been one little step at a time, and it's been beautiful to see how things blossom as you create something little. And that's been an encouragement to me. I can create something little, and it just will keep on growing when the core of it is good, and the people are just working towards something that's a good thing, and that's been needed in the community. And so as you create a business, obviously it has to be something that the community needs. And we're finding that more and more. As the more I do theater, the more I'm seeing it's the whole process that's good for people to be together, to be creating art together. So we're excited.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I think another thing I don't want you to discount is that, it's doing one thing, slow steps at a time. It's having something they need, but it's also about having a really clear vision, which you shared at the beginning, how you view art, and it's having a clear vision. It's communicating that and staying true to that. And my children have been in some of these productions, and they're not just the place for them to perform on a stage, but they build relationships and they build community. And you've talked about how you value community and encouragement. And so I think it's also the embodiment of all that you bring to who you are as an artist, as a creator, as a teacher, director, that is also been part of the success. So you have to take some of that too. So Beth, as we wrap up, again, just thank you so much for coming in today. And I just love also the opportunities we have to check in and check in, not just about, business or acting but just life. Like I said, our kids are the same age ranges, and the craziness of juggling life in the midst of trying to be true and authentic in how we're called to serve and show up in the world. And you've always made me feel more comfortable with the messiness in my own life, because it's just part of the way it is in this time. But if you had to share, I don't know, maybe the biggest lesson you learned in the process of the last 7-8 years, something that maybe a lesson or something that you wish you could have done differently, the wisdom you gained in the process, what would that be?
There's a lot. And I think that letting the busyness be okay, because we're all busy, but creativity is a life-giving thing that really, and I know you say this a lot, and actually hearing you say it just continues to help me as well. We're spurring each other on, but let your creativity be you, because there's something unique in you. And again, my faith, we are created by a creator who's so creative. And the more I tap into that, the closer I am to who I am created to be. And so that's been really freeing. I grew up not even knowing that I was all that creative, and it's just been a beautiful thing to find a voice for that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, and I guess I would just summarize that and say, trust your heart, do what delights you, and let yourself be uniquely you, because that's how God designed you.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you today.
It was great being here. Thank you.
Wow, Elle, I love what you pulled out of Beth's interview. And I think what stands out the most, and that maybe sets her apart a little bit from our other guests, is that when it came to writing, she wasn't like, oh, I've been a writer my whole life. I would love to write a play. It's always been a dream. It came to her, and then she thought, I don't write. I can't do that. But then through the encouragement of others and doors opening, she found herself doing it. And it really is an amazing show. I think I've seen it 3 times or something. My best friend was actually cast as the very first Rose, who's the principal actress in it. So it was really cool for me to hear that backstory. And just as a side note to our listeners, if you want to learn more about Horizons of Gold, you can just go to www.horizonsofgold.com and you can find out how to bring it to your city.
Yeah, and there are video clips. I think there are sound samples, like song samples.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I just love about the musical, I also saw the iterations of it as it evolved and improved.
Right.
But when she talked about the 2 different musical connections, her brother-in-law and then another collaborator, they are top notch. I mean, writers who write for Disney and Opryland. And so she was able to piece the story together, but yet surrounded with these world-class musical composers. So it is a beautiful piece. So again, as Clara said, check it out if you're interested.
Yeah, so thank you again to Elle for such a wonderful interview and conversation, and thank you to Beth for joining us right here in the studio.
If you were inspired by what you heard today, I would love for you to share it with a friend. And also, reviews are the number one way that this podcast will be able to help more people step into their creative life purpose, and I would be honored to have yours. I'm so grateful you joined us for today's episode. I bet you're here because you know there's something more for your life. Whether you're moving into something creative or letting go in order to take that next creative step, I have something for you. My free guide to graceful transitions. You can find it at lzimmerman.com/transitions. And remember, if she made it, you can too.